Why is it important for PLAN to engage with the European Union and its institutions?
It's globally one of the largest donors, if not the largest. On ECHO it is the largest on humanitarian aid, but on funding itself it's one of the largest. So it's very important to make sure that our sort of core themes like child protection, child rights, gender issues, that they are on the top of the agenda of the EU, as they will influence many other countries with their funding approach. And second, once we have those approaches there, they will give calls through which our national organizations can start applying for funding itself.
How has the mandate of PLAN EU office changed since its inauguration in 2003?
The sort of change I've seen is that from a sort of mostly funding-driven idea, we became very much an organization that has a few pillars in its strategy, and one was advocacy, so really promoting child rights in the EU environment, European Commission, European bureaucrats, so making sure that child rights are on top of their agenda, and second, that we would get funding for child rights issues so that our NOs could start applying for it. And I think that sort of strategic thinking came in maybe 4 years ago, and we have really seen the team developing very fast from a very small two women's team to a large group now, which is popular amongst interns and has a lot of support throughout the organization, and also it's very often used as an example of a model of working together.
Currently, the EU budget, the multi-annual financial framework, is being negotiated. What should the EU focus on in the sector of aid?
PLAN has started sort of placing gender, the issue of girls on the agenda of many organizations, as we notice that if you look at poverty statistics, it's all about countries and about age, but never about gender. If you make the difference, you really see that girls are much worse off than boys. So looking at details within countries actually makes sense, and that sets another agenda. So that's why we are so strong about inclusion, as we have seen. If you focus on people that have been excluded for long, you actually accelerate on the MDG agenda. So focus on inclusion, for example, means not just focusing on the poorest countries, and many national organizations and many countries are doing so in focusing on sub-Sahara Sahel countries, which is about 80 million people together from Somalia to Senegal. But if you look at other countries, you find exactly the same poverty statistics in Brazil, but then you have 100 million people. You find similar statistics in India, but you have 400 million people, and you can go around to China, Indonesia, other places. Those are all middle-income countries that are left out of most of the strategic discussions, most of the funding discussions of national governments and EU. But I'd like to see inclusion on the agenda, and then also focus on the poorest of the poor. If you want to reach the bottom billion, actually 70 or 80% of those live in middle-income countries.
The EU agenda for change focuses very much on growth. How do you see this focus?
If you talk about economic growth, that's what you mean. If you invest in the poorest, there's very clear statistics made by the World Bank what happens if you start investing. For example, a child under 3, if you make sure that it gets well nutritioned in its first 1,000 days, it completes 2 years more education, and it actually produces 40% more income. So if you're talking about growth, you invest in the poorest, whether it's girls, whether it's the under 3 nutrition rates, all statistics point in a similar way. Invest in the poorest and your global production starts going up. So if you want to see economic growth, invest in the poorest and you accelerate income.
This year, the first ever UN International Day of the Girl Child will take place. What do you hope for with the inauguration of this day?
Well, I think what we do hope is getting the issue of inequality between girls and boys, which is in fact an issue of injustice, to get that very high on the agenda. Right now everyone is involved in poverty, people are involved in child protection issues, child rights issues, but people forget that if you really want to make a difference, you need to make sure that both girls and boys get the same rights and opportunities. So I want to get that very high on the agenda all around the world, and having a day that draws a lot of attention at the UN level and other places around the globe will help us raising that profile.
You have been a fervent supporter of the Because I'm a Girl campaign. How has this campaign changed PLAN as an organization?
It hasn't changed plan yet, I think, but it does change those organizations, those country offices, those national organizations that have taken it very seriously. If you start a campaign with a theme that's that strong, and I would say 50% of the population actually recognizes the problem and also recognizes the solutions, and the other 50% of the population is sitting next to it on the couch in the evening when they watch TV. So if you can convince 50% of your population on the issue of gender, it's so strong, it's so emotional, that it actually overpowers your current image. And that's what happened to Plan in the Netherlands. We were losing Plan, so that's why we decided to turn the whole organization into pink and make sure that the Plan was known for this rather than a new organization came aboard. And I think I see that happening with other places. If people really understand the urgency of the issue of girls and also really understand the urgency of the solution, you actually see your image and your identity changing.
Will Plan be recognized as a girls' organization rather than a children's organization in 5 years' time?
Well, to be very honest, I'm always very direct on that. I wouldn't mind. People say, well, what about the boys? So, well, the boys have been taken care of over the last decennia, if not centuries. Girls have been left out, so it doesn't matter to start spending some more time focusing on girls. And if people then think, well, Plan is an organization that stands up for girls, well, so be it, because we do know if we invest in girls, all children will get it better in the end, because a girl that's educated is a girl that gets more income, is a girl that takes better care of her own children in the future. So if you want to solve child poverty issues, focus on girls, it's easy.
In times of economic crisis, many are concerned about the effectiveness of aid. What can Plan do to make development projects more effective?
It's a big issue in Plan for a long time. We've always been very accountability driven and tried to crack the nut of effectiveness. How do we measure our impact? How do we demonstrate our impact? And we've never been very successful. And when we're looking at our colleague organizations, actually no one has really cracked that issue. And that's why it's such a big theme amongst the donors, amongst the development community. But right now I think we have defined what we call the performance agenda. So we actually talking about performance, where we say performance is actually field managers delivering high quality CCCD programs. And that means we need to define quality, we need to support quality, we need to report on quality, and we need to measure quality. And I think those issues are now part of a larger effectiveness agenda. And I hope that if we do crack the nut of effectiveness, we actually can lead the game.
How can proving effectiveness contribute to the continuation of development aid, even in times of economic crisis?
If you're effective, if you actually measure results, it has two sides to it. One is for your own cause. You can actually explain, well, we have invested this amount of money and this is what we've done with it. So if you would give us more money, we would have more effect. So it's in fact building evidence to get new grants in. But it's also building trust amongst the donors and sharing that with other donors, that if you can actually develop evidence and contribute to the discussions in the development community, you would see the profile raising and also the willingness of donors to provide. People get tired of giving money without ever hearing anything back. That would be the same with your own children. If you support children but you won't know what they're doing at school, you wouldn't be interested anymore. But they do tell you what they're doing at school, and I think that's very similar to what we should be doing. So try to measure your effectiveness and then report about it.